we are going to try to combine the world of Squid Game with the world of ancient Roman gladiatorial combat.
This is one where I think a lot of our listeners can really wrap their heads around this, because a lot of people, I think, are familiar with at least one, if not both of these things.
Yeah, you've got Squid Game, this South Korean series, all about like social commentary and class warfare and people that are desperate for money getting involved in these deadly games.
And on the surface, it's all like fun and games until people start dying.
Yeah, and then on the other side, you have gladiatorial combat in ancient Rome, which of course was a brutal, bloody affair that also had like a whole social hierarchy and a whole lot of cultural meaning wrapped up in it.
Yeah, so much symbolism going on in there with like life and death and the power of the emperor and all that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So what our listener wanted to know was, what if we took the concept of Squid Game, those games, the structure, the whole setup, and just like dropped it right into ancient Rome?
I love this idea. I mean, we don't have like a historical document that says, all right, here is the Roman version of Squid Game.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately not, but we can kind of use our imaginations and, our knowledge of both Squid Game and ancient Rome to kind of like speculate and explore what that might have been like, right?
Yeah, definitely. So, when we think about it, we can think about, how certain games would have been adapted. How would a gladiator, who is trained for combat fare against, just an average Joe off the streets. And then, of course, you can't forget that all-important Roman audience.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, they're a huge part of this whole thing. How would the crowd, react to these games that might be a little bit different from what they're used to?
Yeah, and is it going to be different enough for them? Or are they going to be like, nah, this is boring, we want more blood?
Like, where are the lions,
Yeah, exactly. So I think there is so much to unpack here.
So why don't we start with like the most iconic game from Squid Game, which is red light, green light. That one where they have to run across the field and the giant creepy doll is turning around.
And that doll, man, I still get chills thinking about that thing.
Oh, it's terrifying, but so simple but so effective, right?
Absolutely.
And then the penalty for losing, of course, is instant death.
So how do we adapt this to ancient Rome?
Yeah, I mean, my first thought is instead of a playground, we're obviously in like the Coliseum or some giant arena.
Right, and you can't forget who's in charge here. The emperor himself could be giving the signal for red light, green light.
Oh man, that's a good visual.
Right, and imagine instead of like a giant doll, it's like a statue of the emperor that's turning around.
Oh, that's even creepier. Like imagine that thing turning around and looking at you.
And instead of statues, you are dodging chariots.
Whoa.
Yeah, driven by skilled charioteers. Like those, they can take you out.
Talk about like upping the stakes.
Oh, absolutely. And don't forget the penalty for losing.
Yeah, instead of those pink jumpsuits, we were going full on gladiator garb. And if you lose, you are probably getting finished off by the editor.
That's right. The gladiator that was specifically tasked with, dispatching the fallen contestants.
Yeah, that's pretty dark.
And, it's not just about recreating the visual spectacle here. You got to think about the potential for manipulation.
Oh, yeah.
The Roman elite, they funded these games so, they could easily rig red light, green light to favor certain gladiators.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe they want their favorite to win, or maybe they're using this as an excuse for a public execution.
Oh, disguised as entertainment, right?
Exactly.
That is dark.
It's brutal. It's ancient Rome.
All right, so we talked about red light, green light. Now, what about the honeycomb game?
The Dalgona candy.
Yes. Yes, with the little shapes they have to cut out.
Yeah, what if instead of like meticulously carving sugar, our contestants are faced with intricate mosaics?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, each tile represents a step closer to freedom or death.
And that kind of delicate, precise work, you would think that would favor certain types of gladiators, right?
Like a retiarius, who is known for their net casting and agility.
I could totally see them like carefully, picking away at those tiles.
Yeah, working under pressure while like a heavily armored merillo is over there like sweating and struggling.
Like trying to hold those tiny little tweezers.
Yeah, right? I mean, it's like a test of intellect versus brute force in a way.
Totally. And then, of course, you can't forget tug of war.
Oh, man, tug of war with gladiators.
Imagine just like the sheer chaos of that.
I'm thinking teams of Thraces, those guys with the curved swords.
Those guys are fierce.
All chained together, just pulling with every ounce of their strength.
The sand is stained with sweat. The crowd is roaring,
It's a display of raw primal power.
and it makes the Squid Game version look like a schoolyard game.
Child's play.
So we've talked about how the games themselves might be adapted. But here's a question I have for you.
Hit me.
How do you think these seasoned gladiators, trained warriors, how do you think they would fare against the desperate but often untrained players of Squid Game?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, we gotta remember, gladiators weren't just mindless brutes.
Right, they were very skilled.
They were disciplined warriors. Some were forced into the arena. Others were seeking fame and glory.
They had a whole code, right?
They had a code of conduct. They trained rigorously. They were accustomed to facing death.
Right, they knew what they were getting into, pretty much.
And you mentioned different types of gladiators earlier. Would their specialization give them an advantage in certain games?
I would think so, right? I mean, like a secutor, for instance,
A secutor, yeah.
who, was trained to fight retiarius, I would think they would be really good at anticipating movements and exploiting weaknesses.
Definitely. And that would come in handy for something like red light, green light.
Right, exactly. But on the other hand, I mean, the psychological pressure of these games, the constant threat of betrayal, that might be a whole new level of stress, even for a seasoned gladiator.
Absolutely. And I think that's where the Squid Game players, while they lack combat skills, they have this desperation that makes them unpredictable.
Right, they're fighting for a life-changing fortune, a chance to escape debt.
Exactly. And that could lead to some really interesting alliances and strategies.
And a willingness to take risks that a gladiator, who's bound by honor and training, might not take.
Right.
So it's almost like you've got two different types of players with two different sets of strengths and weaknesses.
It's a clash of motivations and survival instincts.
That's fascinating.
It really is.
All right, but now let's bring in the elephant in the room, or should I say the lions in the Coliseum.
The Roman audience.
Yes, those bloodthirsty spectators who live for this stuff. How do you think they would react to these Squid Game-inspired games?
Well, I mean, the Romans, their appetite for spectacle was insane.
Oh yeah, insatiable.
They had gladiatorial combat chariot races, public executions. It was all part of their entertainment.
It was like their version of Netflix, right?
Yeah, basically. And, I think Squid Game, with its focus on psychological manipulation and strategic gameplay, I think it would offer them a new and intriguing twist.
Yeah, I could see it going both ways, though. Like, would they see it as a refreshing change from the usual brutality, or would they be bored by it and demand more blood and gore?
I can totally see that happening. Picture this, a senator bored with the usual gladiatorial duels. He leans over to his companion and he's like, "These games are far too tame. Where's the real carnage?"
Oh my gosh, I can hear him saying it.
Right. And then meanwhile, you have a commoner, someone who doesn't normally get to see this kind of stuff. They might be totally captivated by the suspense and the unexpected twist.
Right, they might get emotionally invested in the players in a way that they don't usually get with gladiators.
Yeah, so, the reaction could be as diverse as Roman society itself.
Well, there you have it, folks.
Right, it's holding up a mirror to our world.
Exactly. So here's the question. How would those themes, those same themes, how would they play out in ancient Rome, a society that also had its own rigid hierarchies and brutal systems of control?
Would the games be seen as just a reflection of those Roman values, or would they be seen as a challenge to the status quo?
Yeah, that is a very interesting question to ponder.
Definitely something to think about.